I nearly got sent back home on the next flight because when I first landed, you know how you're supposed to write down your address when you land? So I spoke to Clive, and Clive had spoke to Adrian, and they said, "Oh no, it's okay. You don't need to write anything you don't need to write an address down. You'll be fine." I got in there, and they said, "Well, you haven't got an address. You're gonna have to go home."
Hello and welcome back to Forever a Lion, an Orlando City podcast. This is an Orlando City podcast about the people around the club. Each episode, we dive into different people who are involved in the club in Orlando City and find out why they love the club and find a little bit more about their stories and who they are. So settle in, grab a beverage, and let's talk some Orlando City. I've got a very special guest. One of my favorite players, one of the best left foots I think we've ever seen play for Orlando City. It is Luke Boden. Luke, welcome to the pod. How are you?
That was an incredible introduction. I appreciate that, John. You've been very nice.
I hold you in high esteem, buddy.
I appreciate you having me on the podcast, bit. Thank you. It's good to see you.
Of course. Please start by telling everybody who you are, what your relationship to the club is, and what brought you to Orlando in the first place.
My name's Luke Boden. I come from Sheffield in England. I came over to Orlando in 2011 in the club's first season. I'd had a conversation with Adrian Heath before coming over, and he told me about the plan for the club and what it was going to look like. And obviously, it sounded really exciting, and he was spot on with everything that he said. Everything that he said, we did, and it was an incredible time and some of the best years of my career.
There was an influx of English boys, right, in that sort of early days that Adrian had gone out and found, and obviously he'd seen you playing for Sheffield at some point. Do you remember like that phone call and like when he called you, and did he say like how he knew about you or what that was?
So the guy that was looking after me at the time was a guy called Clive Clark, an Irish guy.
Yeah, top Stoke player, great.
So Clive was looking after me at the time when he was working with Gary, and I was at the Garrison, which is like a hotel / bar / restaurant that I'd gone to after one of the Wednesday games. And I was with Clive, and Adrian actually called Clive on the phone to speak to me. So I spoke to him after a game one day in the Garrison. He told me the plan, and it was everything happened pretty quick after that. And like I said, I landed in Orlando on February. I think it was February the 2011. So it was.
You remember the date?
I've stayed here ever since. I do remember it.
That's crazy.
I remember it well because when I got there, I nearly got sent back home on the next flight because when I first landed, you know how you're supposed to write down your address when you land. So I spoke to Clive, and Clive had spoke to Adrian, and they said, "Oh no, it's okay. You don't need to write anything you don't need to write an address down. You'll be fine." I got in there, and they said, "Well, you haven't got an address. You're gonna have to go home." And I was like, "Well, this makes no sense." So I actually got took to the back. And they were asking me all these questions, and I guess they just thought I was going to come to America and just disappear. But yeah, so one of the guys walked past the interview room and just said, "Oh, there's a flight back to London, just send it back." And I said, "Well, I'm not even from London, so that'd be even worse." So I think it was like a 9-hour flight. They were just going to put me on the next flight back, but luckily Clive and Adrian figured it out, and Adrian actually picked me up from the airport, which was nice.
There's probably a phone call there to somebody in the city to say, "Please don't, send this guy back. He's our new player."
I was so scared. I mean, it's hard enough coming to a different country and leaving family and friends, and then to find out that you're just going to be sent straight back. It was just, it was tough, but it was very quick in the grand scheme of things, and we figured it out.
So what was your sort of first memory like of the club? Obviously you landed, and then you sort of with that first training session. I know you were staying at that point up in, was it up in Altamont Springs? Were you in one of the apartments the first couple of years?
No, we were in Sanford.
In Sanford, up by the
We were
training
in
facility,
we were
right?
in Sanford up by the training facility. But one of my first recollections of being in Orlando was that night that I'd landed. There was a team dinner / team night out, and Adrian just dropped me off at the apartment and said, "Get your clothes on, because there's a team dinner." So I was like, "What?" I'm knackered, like exhausted. You know, it's like flying.
Yeah.
From back home. And I was just exhausted. And I thought, oh, okay, like, and I put my clothes on, went out, and all the guys were there. I remember Nandy, Kieran Bernard. He was the one that drove me downtown after wherever we went to eat, and yeah, it was. But that pretty much summed us up as a club at the time. It was, everybody was. I feel like this word family is thrown around so loosely nowadays, but it was very much a family feel. Everybody looked after everybody, and we were always together, eating together, spending time together, relaxing, and, going to the beach. We just did everything together, and obviously that translated to the field.
Those 4 years in USL, and then obviously you went as well, one of the only players to play USL and MLS in that squad. So some of those memories I have of that USL time were, just winning back to back, and the amount of enjoyment you guys, I think, had, on the field. But like you talked about, there was a lot of fun off the field as well. Can you describe to me any of those memories that really stand out for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, we pretty much did everything together as a team, and I think one of the biggest things that the club did was that sense of community, and really, the players were very reachable as a fan. The players were very accessible. You could go on the field and get all signed, pictures signed. You could get pictures. You could go to your local Publix, and I guarantee one of the players was going to be there. Kay obviously did a fantastic job with a community outreach, and continues to do that. So everybody was very accessible. It was, we played for the city, and the city supported us, and it was just a fantastic time to play.
After the games, like you said, everybody would come on the fields. You guys would
Yeah.
stand out there for, it felt like a good, hour or so. They'd just be out there, and you'd have, some of the players would have their kids out there, and they'd be kicking a ball in the net. And then you've got the coaches chatting with, the fans, and the owners chatting with, it was just very, like you said, it is overused, but it did kind of feel like a big family. Did you really used to enjoy that sort of interaction with the fans after the
it
games?
was good, and it didn't matter if we had a bad game, and the first thing that we would do, we'd obviously go in the locker room, and Adrian would speak, and sometimes we would get it, if we had a bad game, as soon as whatever was said, and whatever was done. It was right, go outside, make sure you go and see the fans, and then I'll see you tomorrow morning for recovery, or he used to give us the day off. So it was very much, it was a priority for everybody. The ownership, obviously the coaching staff, and for the players, it was really, really important that we did stuff for the fans, because they used to come out for every game. I mean, they would travel to games and come and see us, even in the early stages. So it was really important that we did that.
Having that English connection that you had with Adrian, I feel like it perhaps wasn't such a shock for you in the way that he ran things compared to maybe some of the other players. Like, you were used to some of that old school English management, perhaps. Did you have a different sort of relationship with Adrian with others, and did you kind of help translate him often, right, to some of the American players?
Yeah, I think obviously being from back home, you know what's coming if you have a bad game, but you also know it's just part of the business. If you've had a bad game or something's happened, you're going to get told, and we prefer it like that. We prefer to be told, and then we move on, and that's how we were as players. We were probably just as bad with each other as players, in terms of holding each other accountable and making sure that everything was done right. And we demanded a lot from each other, so it was no surprise that Adrian was doing the same thing. He pretty much let us. We ran the locker room ourselves. He had very little influence over the locker room. We were very disciplined. We had fun. We really enjoyed ourselves. But when we crossed that white line, whether it was training or it was a game, Adrian was the same. It was time to work, and we worked very, very hard, and we won games because we worked hard, and we enjoyed each other as people. So it really worked.
Indeed. I mean, that back line, I feel like, is such a great combination with, yourself and Nandy and Rob, and of course, Miguel, all of you guys had such great chemistry and consistency. Managed to lift 4 trophies in 4 years. It was such a successful time. Do you have any particular memory on the field that is the one that kind of stands out for you the most?
I'd probably say the Charlotte game is probably I think it was it was the Charlotte Eagles, and I think the game, I can't even remember, the score was something ridiculous. I think it was like 7-4. It was something ridiculous. But I remember that game not only because, the defending and the defending wasn't very good, but the attacking obviously on the day was very good, thankfully. But there was an incredible attendance at the game. There was a lot of energy around the stadium. There was a lot of expectation around the stadium, and I think that as players, we had to make sure that we produced. And luckily we did. Adrian was not happy at full time. Obviously, you're conceding 4 goals and having to score. I think it was 6 or 7 at the time. He was not a happy chappy, but luckily we got the job done. But that definitely stands out for me in the early stages because of that really showed how much the club was about to take off.
And what an epic final. I mean, like, over 10,000 people there, massive score line. And like I said, one of the only players then to stay with the team and go into MLS. Can you kind of talk a little bit about, that experience of going from, a USL club to an MLS club and sort of, how that changed in your eyes? Because there weren't many players that managed to retain in that squad. I know Miguel obviously would love to have been in there, and several other players perhaps could have been part of that, but then you had to play with a whole new MLS team of Orlando City.
Yeah, I think, I think it goes without saying that many of those players that you just mentioned could have quite easily made that jump. And I think that would have probably made the transition a little bit more seamless. I think it's really tough. And I think at any level, you look at any team that leaves so many players behind and has to acquire so many players, and all of a sudden you're trying to throw these players together and make a team and try and be successful. It's very, very hard to do. So I think we could have definitely brought more of the players that we had, that core group that we had that you just mentioned. But the changes, it becomes very much a business. I don't think, the level changes, but I don't think it was anything that we weren't used to. We played in US Open Cups. We played plenty of, Premier League teams. We played teams from Brazil. We played Roma. So we were accustomed to playing against good players, against good teams. Granted, it's preseason, but these are still top teams and top players. So the level didn't really surprise us. I just think that there was just so many new faces in such a short period of time that it was always going to be very difficult to just be successful right off the bat. And now the club's got themselves in a position where it's, the ship steadied a lot more, and now there's become a lot more success, a lot more consistency, and it's just good to see the club back on top again.
Yeah, we do like to be up there at the top of the league. Alrighty, different question for you. You've played with a lot of guys in USL and then some, really famous players like Kaká in MLS. But who is your sort of favorite player that you played with? You could have a few honorable mentions if you want to make sure you call out your friends.
4 favorite players. You put me on the spot.
Yeah, I know.
I think most players that played during that time wouldn't disagree with Lewis Neal being, up there as probably one of the best players that we had. I mean, in terms of his talent, his attitude, his mentality, his professionalism. And you know Lewis just as well as me. He's a great person. He was a fantastic player, very, very talented. So I would probably put him up there as the number one. And then, Kevin Molino, I think that's another one. Kevin Molino, his talent, the things that he could do with the ball, the fact that he could slow a game down to his speed. It was just he could do things with the ball that it would just wow you in training. Never mind in games. And then who else? I think they're probably the 2 that really stick out in my mind as these are top players.
Yeah, I feel like Kevin Molino at that level was like a cheat code at times, right? He could just do things in USL.
Yeah, he was doing
no one else. And
the thing is with Kevin, he just got better year after year. He was just, just getting better and better. And it's really unfortunate that he got the injuries that he did, because I truly believe that he would have took off to to even greater heights than what he did. I mean, the guy's had a fantastic career, and I know he's still playing back in Trinidad, but he was a top player, and it was really sad to see him go through that period with injuries.
Yeah, and Lewis Neal, another Stoke connection there, another English guy, just a very intelligent player. I feel like a lot of the players on that team were really smart, and the way that he used to distribute the ball, I mean, just passing distribution from midfield, he'd find any of you guys, he'd find the long ball to Dennis all the time.
Yeah, I think with Lewis, Lewis is one of them that he's probably a little bit underrated to the casual eye. Kevin Molino sticks out because he's got the tricks and the step overs, and he's got the little turns, and he's got these great little things that he does. Lewis, as a player, to play with someone, to see someone like on a regular basis, his technique and the way he strikes a ball, and like you say, how clever he is as a player. He's very much a player's player. You recognize his abilities and his talents, not only as a player, but as a person as well. He was fantastic.
Smart player. You were pretty good yourself, Luke, at times, running up and down that left wing.
I used to do Lewis's running. That's why he was so good, Lewis, because he never used to have to run.
We played with the overlapping fullbacks, right? That was like a big signature thing. So you were always going up and down that left side. Do you have any like particular memory about like tactical things that Adrian used to tell you, or like maybe there was something he always say, "Oh, Luke, you got to work on this." Do you remember?
I loved playing for Adrian because he was very much attack minded. I had to defend. I did have to defend. That was part of my job, but he was very much someone who would encourage me to go forward and to go and get around people and try and make things happen in the final third. And as long as you got back in and you recovered, he was fine with that. But I always remember, one of my first sessions with Lewis, and we roomed together, me and Lewis, for a little bit as well. And I always remember Lewis turning around to me and saying, I'm probably not going to be able to get back. You're probably going to have to be the one that gets back. And I just remember saying to him, like, I'm not going to say what he said on the podcast, but what I said on the podcast, but yeah, I had a few choice words and we had a laugh about it. But he was true to his word, though. I definitely did do his running for him.
Sacrifices have to be made, right? The game days for you guys back then, do you have any rituals as a player that you would kind of, some of them going to have their headphones on. Some people, are very, very particular about what they do before a game. Were you like that? Did you have anything like that?
I think my biggest thing is OCD. I'm very I like things a certain way. I never really had to have my headphones in, or I had to do this, or I had to do that. There were certain things that I would choose to eat before a game, but if that changed, I wasn't really that fussed. But when it comes to like putting your socks on or putting the boots on and tying them the right way, that was really meticulous about the way that I put my socks on and boots. And the laces, everybody knows about the laces. Everybody always used to make fun of me about the laces, the stuff with the laces. But I was really, that's probably my biggest thing. And even to this day, I'm still like that. So I don't even think that was just a soccer thing. I think that's just stayed with me.
Tell people about the laces for those who don't.
So I used to, because I don't know what it is, but I feel like all boots nowadays, all boots just have the longest,
classic black and white boots, right?
Yeah, so I wore the Legends. I wore their 50s, and I think I wore Tiempos a little bit as well. But I always used to have to cut the laces and burn the ends to make sure that it didn't fray, and to make sure that they were the same length, so that when I tied them in the double knot, it was the same length. So it's
perfect lace.
Oh, it had to be perfect. It was. Think back now, that was a little crazy, maybe.
I think every player's got something, right? That was just
I mean, it's definitely not a Rafa Nadal where I'm having to put water bottles under my chair a certain way, but it was definitely before a game. The laces had to be right.
Yeah. Nowadays, like when you ever go to a game, do you have any sort of game day rituals you like to do? You kind of a tailgating guy, or you just kind of go with the family?
No, I like to if I go with my kids, and obviously my kids are still, my youngest kids are still quite small, but I spoke to my wife, and I would like to start taking my older ones to games more often, because it's just great. Sport's fantastic, but I think live sport far surpasses anything that you can see on TV. So, And my eldest girl, my 4-year-old girl, she's nearly 5. She loves soccer, so I think she's going to be the one that is really going to push me to go to the games, which I'm excited about. I loved, obviously, I've had this period where we've not been able to do it, so I can't wait for the time where they'll, hey, Dad, can we go to this game? Can we go to that game? I can't wait for that.
You have to get her out to see Barbara Banda in action.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's what we want to see.
Yeah.
A different question. What part of Orlando City do you kind of enjoy the most? I mean, there's so many different aspects to the club, the communities or the game days, or maybe the youth club side. Which part have you kind of always connected with?
I think as a player, the locker room and the environment that we had, the players that we had, we just mentioned a couple of players there, but we had lots of talented players. There's no doubt we had talent, but I think even better than that, and I think anybody that knew the team at that time, would vouch for each one of those players of how they were as people, fantastic people. We all worked really, really hard for each other. We all had the greatest respect for each other, even though at times, we would argue, we would disagree, and training would get a bit feisty at times, but that's just how we were. We were very, very competitive on a daily basis, but we were also very, very close knit, and we would have done anything for each other to win a game, and even off the field we'd have done anything for each other, and I think that translates really well. And now as a coach myself, I know how important that environment is, and I know just how much that does translate to the field.
Do you feel like you learned so many good lessons from your time under Adrian and the other coaches that you were under that you're now able to really, relay those to the kids that you teach and coach?
Yeah, I mean, Adrian, the way he wanted to play and the way they wanted to do things, very, very forward thinking. I mean, he was a striker as a player, a very good player. And, everything that he wanted from us was attack minded. He loved to possess the ball. He wanted to go, break lines and et cetera, et cetera. And I had another coach, Sean McCauley, and Sean McCauley was my academy director when I was at Sheffield Wednesday. And then obviously them two ended up getting together and being the coaches together at Minnesota, which is funny. But I've actually seen them together quite a few times in Winter Park. But they're two coaches that definitely had a lot of influence on how I coach now. You take the good bits, you try and leave the bad bits, and then you try and also incorporate your own style and incorporate your own thoughts on how you see the game being played. But they definitely have a huge influence on how I coach, for sure.
I remember a lot of the sort of not only coaching stuff, but the team building stuff that Adrian used to do. And a lot of that sort of like, make him do karaoke, or, you'd be doing the, guess the song in the minibus, like all of these sort of things that really like just helped with growing that whole squad mentality and got you guys to be a lot closer. Is there any of those examples that you say that this was something that I took and used?
Well, it's not something that I can use because obviously I'm in college.
Yeah.
Well, I coach at the academy in the mornings, which is middle school, high school kids, and then with FC America, I do the U16s, and then obviously at Rawlins, I have the college kids. So what I'm about to say now, it doesn't really translate.
You can't do that with the youth.
But it was really good for us as players because it made you stop thinking about the game. I think we used to go on bus trips and we would sit at the front of the bus and Adrian would be telling his stories and we'd all be laughing and joking, and then we had a card school, so all the guys would be playing cards. Everybody was involved with the cards. Obviously the cards was very competitive, but it was stories, cards. There was very few people that were just on the phones for an entire trip, and we'd drive up to Charleston 7 hours, 8 hours, and we'd all be chatting and laughing and telling stories and playing cards, and then we'd go up, play the game, and then we'd drive back, and on the way back we'd stop at a gas station and Adrian would say, right, go get some food and you can get a few beers for the bus. So all the lads would be, we'd go wherever it was, we'd go get something to eat, and then we'd be into the 7-Eleven bringing some beers on the bus. It would just continue with that. Lads would just be laughing, and you can't sleep after games anyway. I mean, it takes so long to decompress after the game. So we'd all be laughing and joking and having a few beers on the bus. It was just, it was a fantastic time, and everybody was an equal and was in the, Adrian was telling stories and Ian was telling stories, and there was no, you can't go near the coaches, or, these players are starting, so these players aren't involved. It was nothing like that. Yeah. Everybody was an equal, and, it was an incredible period. Incredible.
I feel like this good old fashioned camaraderie, like a lot of these coaches nowadays are having, I'm sure you have trouble, pulling the kids out of their phones to talk to each other for 5 minutes. Like, so it's interesting, right? Over 10 years or so, how different, things could look, and also like how different challenges can have, right? That was never a challenge for you guys to all communicate, but a lot of now, like I said, the coaches are dealing with different issues, and trying to get these guys to have that level of camaraderie that you had is not easy, I think.
Yeah. And I think also, I think it was important. Adrian was hot, he was tough. He was a tough coach, and he demanded a lot of us as players. But he did a really good job of separating himself as a coach and as a person. And he could bollock you for 10 minutes and then it's done. And I think that's so important that you're able to do that, because he's expecting something of you, and he's telling you that in those 10 minutes, and he's telling you that this is not acceptable, don't do it again. But then after these 10 minutes are done, we can laugh and joke about this story or that story or whatever, and it's done. And I think that's really, really important. And I think we've probably lost that a little bit. I don't want to say everybody gets it, but I think probably people can take that the wrong way sometimes. If somebody tells you something straight and honest, I think a lot of people tend to take it to heart instead of realizing this is somebody telling me from a professional perspective, this is what you need to do better, and then it's done, and now it's back to being the person, and that's done, and that's forgot about, and we move on. I think that's probably lost a little bit.
Okay, so this is a deep question, Luke, but what does Orlando City mean to you?
I just spoke with Kay about this the other day, actually.
Kay's always talking with that. I know you're always texting and chatting with each other.
Kay was incredible.
All of the USL players are kind of her kids, right? She kind of wants to look after.
Yeah, she looked after us big time. She looked after us big time. She looked out for us, and still, even now, she looked out for us.
Yeah,
I think she knew how hard it was for a lot of us to leave home, because America, we both speak English, but the culture's so different. And to leave family and to leave friends and to come into a new culture, into a new environment around new people. And then all of a sudden you have Kay that's kind of like linking these people together and these similarities. And all of a sudden, people start to get along, and you get what we've just gone through throughout this podcast, which is an incredible environment. And Kay was a massive part of that. But Orlando to me is home. I never want to leave. I've got my beautiful family here. I work with some incredible people, and it's given me so many opportunities that I'm very, very grateful for. But home is something that I definitely call it out for sure.
Okay. And in all that time, I know when we first arrived in 2010, it kind of seemed like a different place to what it is now. And lots of, restaurants and bars and even new parks have opened since then. So give us a few of your favorite Orlando spots, places over the years that I used to love going here, or now maybe this is my favorite restaurant or coffee shop or whatever that is.
That's a really good question.
You can name a few. There's no,
I would say, we'll go area. Obviously, I feel like we've always been attracted to the Winter Park area. I think it's just this unknown area that people didn't really know. I mean, when you think of Florida, I remember when Clive told me, hey, you're going to be going to Florida, and Orlando, Florida. And I was like, what? And you instantly think Mickey Mouse, parks, you're thinking you're going to be living 5 minutes from the castle.
It all looks like iDrive. Yeah.
Every chocolate bar you grab's gonna have Mickey Mouse ears, and it's just so when you get here and you go to places like Winter Park and you're like, this is just like, it's a different world. And obviously working at Rawlins College now, and being in that area.
Campus.
I mean, the campus it's ridiculous. And I tell the players all the time, we have a lot of international players that come on campus and they're just like, what is this place? And then you fall off campus and you fall onto Park Avenue. Then you fall off Park Avenue, you fall into Hannibal Square. And it's just like, and I tell the players all the time, this is a bubble. This is not real life. This place is an absolute bubble. And you should be very appreciative to be here and to be enjoying this for however long that they're at the college for, 4, 5, sometimes 6 years. And, it's no surprise that they have an incredible time. I would say anywhere on Park Avenue, anywhere in Hannibal Square, coffee shops, restaurants, parks, it's very family friendly. It's just got absolutely everything. I mean, you got the Sunrail that can take you everywhere. I mean, it's an incredible place.
The not only is Rawlins just a beautiful campus, but you guys have got a really beautiful little stadium there. And I was going to ask, do you remember the Roma game? Did you play in that one?
I
feel like you did. Yeah,
that was. So we'd played Rawlins in preseason. So that's how I actually got to know Keith Buckley, the head coach at Rawlins, was because we used to play. Well, Keith used to come to the field and watch training because Keith and Adrian were good friends, and we got to know each other a little bit. We would speak a little bit, and then we used to play Rawlins in preseason.
Yeah.
And it was Keith and Graham. Graham was the assistant coach at the time, who was a Scottish guy. So, we would go and have a drink with him. And so I got to know him through him coming to training and playing these preseason games. And then obviously playing the game there against Roma, which was an incredible experience. And then to eventually years later be working there has been a bit of a whirlwind.
Yeah, I mean, Francesco Totti was on that field. I always think that's like the weirdest thing.
Yeah. Remember Francesco Totti? You remember Adamar and Menge?
Yeah, one of my favorites.
So one of the running jokes from that game was Francesco Totti came on the field, and he think he came on a sub for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And obviously he came on the field, and Adamar, he'd had it in his head that he's going to get this ball off Totti, and Totti, he kept like pulling it. He kept dragging the ball, and Adamar kept pulling his shirt, and Totti just gave him the biggest slap on the back of his neck. I mean, it was so loud, and the referee didn't do anything. Just because it was Totti, he just slapped Adamar on the back of the neck, and we were all laughing, just laughing about it after the game because it was ridiculous. But it was, it was an incredible game, and there was some amazing players on the field at that time.
Yes, another player that maybe one day we'll get Adam on here. I'd love to hear, what he's up to now in France and his story. Thank you so much, Luke, for telling us everything about, your experience as a City player. Is there anything you want to tell the people or any questions you have for me?
No. Obviously for the fans of Orlando City, I'm just really excited and glad that the club's got itself to a position now where it's, very successful under a very successful manager and ownership, and long may it continue, because it's fantastic for the city. People are talking about the club again, and people are excited to go to the games, and it's just it's got that buzz back around the club, which is, as a former player, it's obviously really really good to see.
Yeah, we remember when the hype level was at, absolute max here in the USL days. So we'd love to get back to that here in MLS, and it helps when you beat your in-state rival 4-1 at home, Luke. So we'll take
help.
that. That does help indeed. Well, I appreciate you so much for being here. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this podcast. If you have not done so, please go ahead and subscribe on YouTube. You can drop us a comment. Let us know what you thought. Say hi to Luke. Let him know how much you enjoyed watching him as a player, just as I did. You can also listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can drop us a rating there if you feel like this is worth 5 stars. That would be awesome, because so many more people out there, we want to reach them so they can hear everything about these great Orlando City stories. I had Scott Sutter on. The week after that, as you're hearing this, I would have also had Miguel on. So Luke, you are the latest here. We thank you so much, but there is so much more to come. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.